Although it'll be the main event for UFC 235, Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith seems to have gone under the radar quite a bit because of the co-main event, which is Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. Now, obviously, in another video, I talked about my thoughts on that, my thoughts on what happened as to why Usman got the fight, not Covington. But that's not what this is about here. This video is about Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. What I'm going to go into right now is the betting odds, which are heavily in favor of Jon Jones. Whether or not I think that's correct, and then just kind of give my prediction on how the fight's actually going to look from there. So the betting odds, according to MMA Junkie, they came out with Jon Jones being a minus 500 favorite. Also, the line shifting to minus 600 for Jones. And what that means is that if you bet $600, then you would win $100 back. So if you bet $600 on Jon Jones, he wins. You get $100 back in addition to your $600 that you had anteed up in the beginning. And then with Smith coming back at a plus 400, that means if you bet $100 on Anthony Smith, in addition to getting $100 back, you would then get $400 on top of it, in case you aren't used to how these betting odds are. But with these fight odds coming out, I also looked at the sportsbook I use, which is BetDSI, and they have it much more in favor of Jon Jones. So they actually have it where Jon Jones is a minus 1250 favorite. That's not going to circle it. So they have minus 1250 for Jon Jones, meaning you would have to bet $1,250 to get back $100 on a Jon Jones bet. And Anthony Smith is coming back at plus 700. So again, you would bet $100 and get 700 back if Anthony Smith wins. As far as whether or not I would take action on Anthony Smith at plus 700, it's tough to say because Anthony Smith is one of those guys who can finish you with one shot, or he can at least like change the course of a fight with one shot and then just bury you. If he doesn't put you away with the first shot, he'll follow up on you, get after you, and finish you then. So for a guy like that who has a chance against almost anyone just because of his power, for him to be plus 700, I can see why people would want to take that. To me, this fight isn't going to be close. It's going to look a lot. I think a lot of what we saw in the Gustafsson fight for Jon Jones is what we're going to see in this fight, in that he's going to keep the distance. He's going to use a lot of leg kicks, kind of draw it out over a while. I think if you're going to be betting on rounds, I wouldn't take Jon Jones in a first round finish. I actually think Jones is probably going to finish it closer to the second or the third round. I think if you're Jon Jones, or really if I was in the position of Greg Jackson or Michael Winklejohn and I had to coach Jon Jones for this, I'd probably go right back to the well what they did with Gustafsson in terms of like general strategy, where you start off keeping the distance, throw a lot of leg kicks, throw a lot of kicks in general. You throw kicks to the body as well. He's got a very good switch kick with his lead leg that he likes to go throw. Obviously, that's the one that knocked out Daniel Cormier. So definitely use that. Probably throw punches, maybe like one or two at a time. I won't really be getting any prolonged combinations. But obviously, when you kick, keep a high guard. Make sure to get out of the pocket after you throw your kicks. A lot of the same stuff he did against Gustafsson is what he's going to want to do against Anthony Smith. And with Smith, he's a guy who in some of his fights later on in the fight, in the later rounds, he tends to get tired, and at that point he's a little bit less dangerous, though he's still dangerous. So I think if you're Jon Jones, you kind of want to just chip away at him early, and definitely use the leg kicks. That was something that Volkan Ozdemir did very well in his fight. And then once Smith gets desperate, that's when you kind of go for the finish. But Smith, here's the thing: as much as I don't think he's going to win this fight, I think he also deserves some respect. To some extent, he's a guy who had 3 wins in a row at light heavyweight. He beat Ozdemir, who was coming off of a loss. He beat Rashad Evans, who looked to be a shot fighter and was on a pretty heavy losing streak before then. And he also beat Shogun Rua, who's not the same Shogun that he used to be, although the light heavyweight division isn't very deep, so Shogun still seems to find his way towards the top of it, even after the losses. But to be fair to Anthony Smith, his striking, though it could be better technically, it's getting there. It's been improving over time. Obviously, there's a lot of power there. His wrestling, I believe he was a college wrestler. I don't remember if he was D1 or not, but he was a pretty solid college wrestler, and he recently received his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And that's worth noting because there are a lot of fighters, especially longtime veterans, who get into this little funk where they just tend to train when they're in a training camp. And when you're in camp versus when you're just training in the offseason, it's a big difference. Obviously, if you played a sport, in the off season, that's kind of when you can work on new stuff, when you can develop new skills. Whereas when you're in camp or when you're in season, that's more when you kind of identify what it is that you're already good at and then just try to sharpen that. So for him to not just kind of stay in the same mold with his grappling and his striking over time, but for him to constantly improve, that shows that he's putting in the time and the effort, and it's starting to pay off right now. So that's good for him. But I think it's one thing to say that Anthony Smith is a pretty solid all-around fighter, but you're comparing him to Jon Jones here because that's who he's fighting. And I don't really see a whole lot of opportunities for him to win here. Obviously, if he lands a shot, that's always a possibility. But from a technical standpoint, I just don't see what a very successful game plan is going to look like for him. And I can definitely see a lot of different successful game plans for Jon Jones. So I'm going to play some highlights from the Volkan Ozdemir's fight, his most recent fight. Just kind of show you what happened there, some of the difficulties that he had. And then from there, we'll just kind of finish up talking about what I think is going to happen.
Well, we knew how evenly matched these guys are, but it was Ozdemir.
So here you see Ozdemir backing him up against the fence.
Really had Anthony Smith in trouble. It looked as if like Anthony was a bit confused and just didn't.
Smith a little bit timid early on. Those leg kicks really did a lot of work for Volkan Ozdemir.
But then you see Smith land his right hand, and then it starts to be the beginning of the end for Ozdemir because he starts to chip away at him, and you can clearly see that Ozdemir is getting a little bit tired. And this is takedown right here.
And this was later on in the fight.
The daggers in for Ozdemir, and Smith just works on top. He was patient here.
And he gets this rear naked choke, which is it's a bit of a cheesy looking rear naked choke, but that's not something you can really hold against Anthony Smith as far as being a bit of a cheesy choke. I don't know whether or not it was the tightest choke, but it's not as though he couldn't get it any tighter. It's just Ozdemir, I think, at that point was done. And once there was something that looked like enough of a rear naked choke, he's ready to kind of call it quits and tap there. But that's not something you hold against Anthony Smith. If the guy that you're fighting is willing to tap to that, then that's not your fault. And obviously, with being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I'm sure he has a very good rear naked choke if he needs to use it. But over the course of that fight, those leg kicks really did a number on him. He was getting pretty desperate in the third round. He was able to land the takedown against Ozdemir. Now, obviously, taking down Ozdemir versus taking down Jon Jones, two completely different things. And then being able to control from top. I think Ozdemir is pretty exhausted at that point. So even though Anthony Smith was also exhausted in the third round, which is notable because, again, this is going to be a 5-round fight. It's one of those things where you just have to it's kind of like if you and your friend are racing away from the barrier, you just have to be faster than your friend. In this case, the friend Volkan Ozdemir wasn't very fast. Well, Jon Jones is a lot better condition than Ozdemir showed in this fight. And if Smith gets this tired early on, or if he has this kind of issue with leg kicks, which Jon Jones is very happy to throw, he's not going to be able to take him down and put him away like he was with Volkan Ozdemir. And I believe there was some footage of him just limping out of the octagon.
Active win streak in the division, but then you got guys like Dominic Reyes, Anthony.
Just to give you an idea
in the division, and
of the damage that he took.
I'm excited.
Yes, this was after about 2.5 rounds of Volkan Ozdemir throwing a lot of leg kicks. And Jones will throw his leg kicks too. He's got decent outside leg kicks. He obviously likes to throw at the knee. And you'd figure if you're Jon Jones, that's going to be the game plan. The game plan for Jon Jones is going to be to keep throwing at Volkan Ozdemir, keep throwing the leg kicks, chop him down, get him to be desperate, and then take advantage of his desperation, and that's when you're going to start to look for a finish. But again, this is something that looks like more of a slow cook for Jon Jones, and it's going to be a quick one. I don't know what the line's going to be as far as let me see what DSI has it. I think I just have the line on the fight itself and not the rounds. Yeah, they don't have anything on the rounds. If under on the rounds is at 1.5 rounds, I would take the over on that. At 2.5 rounds, you're really pushing it because, again, 2.5 rounds is sort of where he was able to get the finish of Ozdemir. I think around the 2.5 round mark is probably where Jones is going to finish him. So if that's the line, you're kind of playing with fire there if you take the over or the under. If it's at a 1.5, I would definitely take the over on the 1.5. I think Smith will do better than people expect because he's going to last a little longer than people expect. But in the end, this just seems like a really rough matchup for him. Jones is a much better fighter than him without the physical advantages, I would say. But then you take into account the height and the reach, and it's going to be a tough fight for Anthony Smith. You know, he seems pretty confident about this fight. He's been calling out Jones. He seems to have this confidence, like he thinks he knows something, and maybe he does. Maybe he's really scouted Jones out for a while and sees a couple of holes. And really in MMA, you really need to capitalize on a hole or two to be successful and actually win a fight. So maybe there's something that he's seeing there. But from my standpoint, I don't see a whole lot of opportunity for him. I see a ton of opportunity for Jon Jones, and that's why I would be picking Jon Jones in over a round and a half.